Choice and accountability. What do those two words mean, and how do they relate to one another? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Principle-based living is all about recognizing and understanding that we live in a world that is based on laws or based on principles. It's not a world based on chance. The cool thing about that is when we understand what those laws or principles are, and then we behave in accordance with those laws, then we know we can get the outcomes that we're seeking. An example of that is gravity. So gravity is a natural law that exists in the world in which we live. And what that says is that, if I take this marker and I believe that I can just set the marker here in the air and it will float, well, it doesn't really matter what I believe or what I think. Gravity is going to work. It's going to take effect. And so if I don't believe in those laws or principles, or if I don't know them or I don't understand them, they're still going to operate and they're still going to affect me, and there will be a consequence for the choice and the behavior that I make. So we have other videos on our channel that talk about the foundational principles that govern things like relationships and happiness and success. So accountability and choice are two of those foundational principles. And you can just click here to check out those videos. But let's talk briefly then about what each of those principles are. So accountability just basically says that you are accountable for your life. And nobody can take that away from you, and you can't give it away. So even if I wanted to be accountable for you, let's say that you wanted to lose weight and get in shape, and I said, okay, I'll make sure that happens for you. There's nothing that I can do to make you lose weight and get in shape. You have to do that for yourself. And then choice, that principle says that in any circumstance or any situation, I get to choose three things. And these are the things that I have control over, which is the third foundational principle. So I get to choose my conscious thoughts, I get to choose my emotions, and I get to choose my behavior. Now, how does accountability and choice work together, and why are they both important? Well, we own and operate a residential treatment center for teen girls, and we have young women that come into our program all of the time who understand that they have choice and they want more choice, but really what they want is they want choice without accountability. They want choice without consequences. That's a violation of the laws that govern the world in which we live. So there is or are consequences for everything that you do in your life. And you can't avoid those consequences. But what happens is, because as a society we don't understand these laws and how they function and how they operate, oftentimes we attempt to violate those laws or those principles. So think about in your own life, have you ever had a situation where you made a choice, you behaved in a certain way, but somebody else stepped in and took the consequence so you didn't experience the consequence? Now think about if you're a parent and you have young children, oftentimes we do that. So our children make decisions or choices, and we're afraid that they're going to be hurt in some way from that. And so we step in and sometimes prevent them from experiencing the consequence of their choice. Well, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Sometimes, from a choice that you make, there could be a serious consequence from that. Sometimes the consequences can result in death, can result in serious injury that can affect us for the rest of our life. But it's interesting that God, who set up these laws, or the universe who set up these laws, doesn't step in and rescue us from the consequences of our choices. We're allowed to experience those consequences. And there's a reason for that. If you are not able to experience the consequences of your choices, you will not learn. And if you don't learn, you will not change. And even though it may appear to you in your life as if there are no consequences because somebody else is stepping in and taking responsibility for them, because you are accountable for your life, it's still having an effect upon you and your thoughts and your beliefs and your continued behavior. And at some point, the person that's stepping in and rescuing you or keeping you from the consequences of your choices may not be there. And you will then experience the consequences of those choices. And it may be much worse than if you would have been allowed to experience the consequences earlier on and learn from those experiences, which would have influenced your choices later in life. We see that all of the time with children. When we don't allow them to experience the consequences of their choices, they don't learn, and their behavior continues and continues until it gets to a place where either somebody can't protect them from the consequences, or that person just is no longer there or unable to do that. My concern is we live in a society today that doesn't understand this. And we have more and more of our youth that are growing up with the freedom to make choices, but not the responsibility or accountability that comes with those choices. And here's what I mean by that. So there are states in the United States that at the age of 14, the child gets to decide what is in their best interest. And so they can go to a medical doctor, and the doctor is unable to release their records to the parent unless the child gives permission for that to happen. Well, that makes sense in some ways, because maybe there is a reason that the child's information shouldn't be released to the parent. But the problem is, legally, the parent is still responsible for the child. If you're the parent now, how do you take responsibility or accountability for somebody that is not you? How do you, here's another example. So you have a teenage son or daughter who is breaking the law, and you go to court before a judge, and the judge now says to you as the parent, look, you're accountable for your child. You're responsible for your child. Your child is misbehaving and breaking the law. We're going to hold you accountable because you're not controlling your child. It's a violation of principle. You can't control your child. All you can do is influence, and you can put boundaries and parameters. And if you want to know more about that, look at the video. It's listed up here, and you can learn more about setting boundaries to help your child make healthy decisions and choices. But the problem is, the message that we're sending to our children as a society is that they can do whatever they want, and they have the right to do whatever they want, but not experience the consequences. The result is they don't learn. And so we have young women that come into our program all of the time whose behavior is out of control because they have not experienced the consequences of their choices, and they have a belief that other people are responsible for taking care of them, and that other people are responsible for making them happy. Here's the problem with that. When I am not making healthy choices myself, so I'm living in a world where all I'm doing is consuming things, and I have a belief and an expectation that it's other people's responsibility to make me happy. It's other people's responsibility to entertain me. It's other people's responsibility to keep me safe. The end result of that is I begin to lose self-confidence. I begin to lose self-esteem. And what I create is self-loathing, which leads to depression. It leads to anxiety. And ultimately, the depression leads to hopelessness, which then leads to a state of, I don't want to live anymore, and a desire to take my own life. And that's what concerns me about the world in which we live. And unless you and I and others are able to understand the principles that govern, we can misuse those principles. So again, you can't take away choice. That's a principle. All of us have a choice. But unless we're allowed to experience the consequences of our choices, we're not going to learn to make self-interest choices. And we will continue to make poor choices until ultimately it will lead us to a place, because again, we can't ignore or avoid the long-term consequences of our choices. This idea of not being responsible and not having the consequences from my choices leads to a place, again, of self-loathing and a desire to not want to live in this world. So you have an important mission to play and to contribute to the world in which we live. Make sure that you understand the principles and how they operate and how they work. Make sure that you're applying them in your own life and in the lives of the people that you associate with. If you have children, it's really important that you understand that and how they operate with your children, so that your children can learn and grow and become healthy and happy and successful in this life. In your relationship with your spouse and with friends and coworkers, the same principles apply there. And by you living them in your own life, that's the best way that you can teach and model for others, because as they watch you and they see your level of happiness, they'll start coming to you and they'll say, what's up with you in your life? How come you're so happy? How come it seems like everything goes the way you want it to go in your life? And it's not that. It's just that you understand the principles and the way that this world operates. And you will yourself reach a place of peace and happiness, love and success, and your relationships will be that as well. Thanks for watching today. Subscribe to our channel. Visit our website at principlebasedliving.com. And if you're watching this on LinkedIn, follow me here.